now available in paperback and e-readers. Spellbound, a darker shade of black. Get your copy today at your favorite online bookseller. There are some people in the goth subculture who express contempt and disdain towards BabyBats. However, what they don't understand is that the BabyBat is a very important person in the goth subculture and may possibly be one of the most important people in the goth subculture. Now, there's an old African proverb that says a race can rise no higher than the moral position of its women. And when it comes down to the goth subculture, I tend to paraphrase with it in saying that a culture can rise no higher than the moral position of the women in the goth subculture, because the women of the goth subculture are the teachers of culture, and they teach the goth subculture from one generation to the next generation. And without the BabyBat, there is no one to teach the culture to, or to pass the culture on to the next generation. And if you don't have people to pass culture onto, then what's going to happen is that that culture, the values, and the traditions of it are going to die. Because when there are no youngsters coming into the culture, that means there's no one there for the older people to teach and pass those traditions onto. And this is the big problem many elitists don't understand about, trying to make the goth subculture insular. Because if you don't have the subculture being open to the BabyBats, then there is nobody there for the women of the goth subculture to teach the culture to and pass down the values and art and literature, and most importantly, the music on to the next generation. And what a lot of people don't understand about culture is that as cultures progress, what happens is one generation passes it down to the next generation then adds on their contributions to the culture, and then they then pass it on to the next generation. This is how cultures form and become, main part of society. This is how cultures are passed down from generation to generation. And when you have people like Gothic elitists around, what they do is they are impeding the growth of the culture, and they are impeding the culture being passed down to that next generation. Because whenever they go out of their way to attack a BabyBat or to ridicule a BabyBat, what they are doing is discouraging that individual from learning more about the goth subculture, learning more about what the goth subculture is, and learning the things that will help them move ahead in the goth subculture. And what a lot of elitists also don't understand is that everybody has to start out someplace, and the BabyBat is someone who is starting out. That means that, yes, all the things that they're doing right now may not be perfect, and they're not meant to be perfect. Each person, comes into the subculture in their own way, and they learn their own approaches to goth. So each person is not going to come down the road the exact same way, and they're not going to come in doing the exact same thing. Yes, people are going to start out with awkward clothes and makeup that's not perfect, but that's just part of the process. And part of being in the goth subculture is learning more about things and discovering things, and that's part of the fun of the subculture is learning and discovering different things. I mean, part of the fun is finding that new piece of gothic literature, or finding that new band, or finding this clothing company like a Punk Rave, or a store like a Queen of Darkness. I mean, that's part of the fun of being in the subculture is discovering these different brands, this different music, this different literature, different art, and finding out what you like and making that part of your style and finding what makes you comfortable, because goth subculture is supposed to be open to everyone, and that was one of the most positive things about the subculture is that it's open to everyone, and that the people who teach the culture mostly, as I've seen, online, the women of the goth subculture are open to sharing it with others and teaching it to others and passing it down. Because in a lot of areas, what I've seen, some people are the only goth in their own town, and when they watch YouTube videos, they learn more about the goth subculture from the other people in other parts of the world in their videos. And then when they're watching those videos, the people who produce those videos, what they're doing is they are teaching that culture and they're passing it down to other people so that they can see what a snapshot of goth is like at this time, and then even get ideas for what they want to, be a part of what they want goth to be in their communities and their parts of the world. And this is something that a lot of people, they take for granted with the goth subculture, especially with BabyBats, because they're the ones, again, who are going to be the ones who pass this culture down, because they're going based on what they're being taught right now by the goths of today in things like these YouTube videos, the gothic literature, and things like I'm trying to produce now, like goth YA fiction. These are the things that are going to pass this subculture down and have records of it for the next generation, so that so that they see what happened at that time and then decide what they want to take and incorporate from that for their interpretation of what they believe goth to be for the next generation. But there is a significant and important role for the BabyBat in the goth subculture, because again, without them being here and wanting to learn more about it, there is nobody there to for the um, elders to pass the subculture on to when they leave this earth and are no more. Because what makes a culture, rise high is that moral position of the women. And what I've seen on YouTube regarding the women of the Gothic subculture is that they have a high moral position and they make every effort to preserve their culture and their traditions, and they try to share that with people so that they can understand what it is, what it's about, what it's important, and they make every effort to teach it to other people who want to learn about it so that they can learn what goth is, what it's about, and be a part of this subculture. And they're very open and inviting, and that's a very positive thing, because without people to teach the culture will pretty much die. And you need people to teach this culture in order for it to continue to grow and be passed on to the next generation. Because a lot of people, they look at the BabyBat and they go, that's just a kid, or that's just nobody. A lot of the elitists will just, dismiss them. And that's not a person you want to dismiss, because that person is somebody who is curious, that's somebody who wants to learn, that's somebody who wants to grow, and that's somebody who wants to be taught. And the more you teach someone, the more they learn, the more they grow, and the more they will learn about things. And if you pretty much dismiss them, then you discourage them, then they don't want to learn anymore, and then they walk away, which is bad for a culture. Because I've seen this, happen firsthand with the comic book collecting hobby. We had a lot of elitists in that hobby, and what happened is those people pretty much made comic books inaccessible for the next generation. And because there was nobody there who was passionate enough to teach comics and teach the history of comics to people, the whole hobby of comic books pretty much went downhill. But when I look at the goth subculture, I see a lot of women making efforts to maintain a high moral position and really value their roles of teachers of the subculture, and make every effort to share the subculture with the next generation so that they can understand what goth is, and then those people, after they've learned what it is, can make their contributions and then pass it on. So when I look at the foundations of the goth subculture, the moral position of the women, with the BabyBats, they have done something great. And I look at the role of the BabyBat as one of the most important roles in the subculture, because the BabyBat is the person who is going to take the Gothic subculture from this generation to the next generation. And everyone needs to treat the BabyBat with all the respect there is and make every effort to try to share the subculture with them, because, again, this is the person who is going to take the subculture into the later part of the 21st century and share it not only with their friends, but with their children as well. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.